I will ask the clerk now on item 2 to read the application and summary of correspondence received, please. 2290 Main Street.
This is an application by Arno Mattis Architecture to rezone 2290 Main Street from Industrial District to Comprehensive Development District to permit a 9-story mixed-use building with a partial mezzanine in the ground floor, 85 residential units, and ground floor commercial spaces. The General Manager of Planning and Development Services recommends approval subject to the conditions set out in the summary and recommendation of the public hearing agenda. Council has received 9 emails and letters in support of the application, 13 opposed and 13 opposed since it was referred to public hearing. This represents all correspondence received on this application by the City Clerk's office up to 9:30 tonight.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have Yan Zheng here, our rezoning planner from the Rezoning Center, to give a brief presentation. Welcome, Ms. Zheng.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to say that the applicant, after my presentation, the applicant also wished to make some remarks about the project. So that will probably affect our timeline as well. The application before you tonight proposes to rezone the site at 2290 Main Street, which is at the northeast corner of Main Street and East 7th Avenue, from IC2 Light Industrial District to CD1 Comprehensive Development District, in order to build a mixed-use building with commercial and market residential uses. So in my presentation tonight, I will outline the policy context first, and then we'll discuss the specifics of the subject rezoning. The site is located in the Lower Main sub-area of Mount Pleasant. Under the Mount Pleasant Community Plan, Lower Main is envisioned to evolve from the existing light industrial district to an urban community where there is a mix of commercial, office, and residential uses. The proposed zoning is consistent with this land use policy objective. So that's the proposed site. Under the adopted community plan, it allows for consideration of additional height beyond 6 stories on sites at Main Street and East 2nd and East 7th. Noting height is a very sensitive issue for the Mount Pleasant community. The plan mandates that investigation of any additional height above 6 stories shall demonstrate how the additional height serves to improve street character and to provide public benefits without compromising the Hilltown urban design concept, important public views, and sound access to the street. It is under this provision, these directions of the community plan that staff took in this rezoning application. Yesterday, Council received the Mount Pleasant Community Plan implementation report and approved the implementation package. In the implementation package, the Lower Main Urban Design Framework is of particular relevance to this site. The framework limits heights to 6 stories on the 3 blocks between 2nd and 3rd, between 3rd and 6th Avenues, Heights up to 11 to 12 stories are anticipated on Main Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, and up to 9 stories at the northeast corner of Main and 7th Avenue. The subject site is one of the key sites in the Lower Main transformation. It transitions from the higher and bulkier buildings along Kingsway to the generally lower scale development along Main Street. Because of its location at the junction of the shifting city street grid, it offers a unique opportunity for a building to respond to different street conditions. The site is outside the Main Street view cone, which starts below the site at East 7th Avenue. So that's the starting point of view cone. That's our subject site. 6th Avenue, sorry. For this reason, staff support the investigation of additional height at this site through a rigorous urban design exercise. The proposed building by Arno Mattis Architecture presents itself as a 9-story building along Main Street with the top 3 floors highly sculpted to provide large setbacks. If approved, the building will have a height of 98.5 feet, consistent with the Lower Main urban design framework. It has a proposed density of 4.92 FSR. Commercial uses are proposed along a grade facing Main Street, as well as wrapping around the corner and continuing along East 7th Avenue. 3 townhouses are also proposed along East 7th Avenue. Here. Along the lane, there are 4 residential units to animate the lane environment, which is one of the key policy objectives of the community plan. I will note that due to the sloping of the site, there is a partial mezzanine floor that is contained in the ground floor volume, which technically constitute an additional floor in the southeast corner of the development, as highlighted here. Staff support the inclusion of this mezzanine level because, first of all, the mezzanine level is a result of the sloping of the site and the need to accommodate the essential ceiling height for the retail space. As you can see, the height of the ground floor is consistent with a functional floor to ceiling height at the highest point of the site for the retail. So that's the point. And second, the mezzanine also allows the inclusion of the townhouses along East 7th Avenue, introducing more housing varieties offered by this project, housing that are suitable for families and also help to animate the street. I would also note that in review of this proposal with the MPIC, the Mount Pleasant Implementation Committee, there was a strong desire to include townhouses in the development. Overall, staff are satisfied that the building reads substantially as a 9-story building from all fronts so that it meets the intent of the Lower Main urban design framework. In terms of neighborly impact, the proposal includes various setbacks from the property edges from 2nd floor and up, with significant setbacks at the top 3 floors, as shown in the diagram here. This approach to massing not only helps to mitigate shadow overlook impact on neighboring buildings, but also sculpts the building in a way to maximize preservation of even private views from neighboring sites. On this diagram, for example, the building setback a minimum 25 feet from the lane edge from the 2nd floor and up to make up for the zero lot line condition across the lane. Right here. To summarize on design and built form, staff have concluded that this proposal has skillfully addressed the unique transitional nature of the site and that it has also respected the Hilltown urban design concept. The proposal includes design strategies to effectively mitigate its neighborly impact, and with the design development conditions recommended by staff, which are contained in Appendix B, the proposal will further improve its interface with adjacent sites. I will now briefly discuss the rezoning process itself and the public consultation. As I stated earlier in my presentation, the application was taken in under the directions of the Mount Pleasant Community Plan and assessed against those directions. Staff made a conscious decision to take in this application, noting that there was a concurrent implementation process to provide more clarity on built form in Lower Main. The applicant has participated in the community consultation process for the plan implementation, including meetings with the MPIC twice to receive their input, one during early inquiry stage and one after the application was made. Further, staff also benefited from the review of this real-life project in terms of proposed form of development, height, and density, which help inform staff's built form analysis along Lower Main. So the implementation work and the review of the subject rezoning have been two parallel processes, each informing each other with lots of community input. The public consultation after the application was received included a community open house and online comment sheets. Over 100 written responses were received as a result. Approximately half were in support and half were against the project. Staff also received a petition opposing the development from 27 individuals, many of whom lived in the district building across the lane from the subject site. Overall, the main concern staff heard was the proposed height, with many people saying that the height should not exceed 6 stories. Of those in support of the project, many cited that development would be a good addition to a diverse community and that architecture is innovative and fitting for Mount Pleasant. As I stated earlier, staff support the proposed form of development and height for this site. Urban Design Panel also unanimously supported the project. To conclude, this application meets the policy objectives of Mount Pleasant Community Plan. It meets the built form directions under the Lower Main Urban Design Framework. The proposal is a very thoughtful response to the unique challenges of its site and its context. The applicant team has done an admirable job of engaging and listening to the community. The General Manager of Planning and Development Services recommends approval of this application, subject to conditions outlined in the report. Mayor and Council, and this concludes my presentation. Staff from various departments are here to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. And we'll give an opportunity to the applicant team, represented by Arnaud Mattis, to speak to the application.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll try to keep this brief. You just have a few slides that fill in a few more pieces of information on this project. So the inspiration for this project really came from 3 snapshots in time. The first snapshot is pre-settlement time in Mount Pleasant. It's a reminder of what was, not that long ago, an amazing rainforest. The next snapshot is settlement time. This is our site at the corner of 7th and Main. There's a building on the site. I believe it's a brewery. It's the first known building that existed on this site. And the planking on the building itself is what provided some additional inspiration for our project. Lastly, this much later in time, even though it's a black and white image, is a photograph of our client standing in front of JB Coffee at 29th and Main. They purchased this business as refugees from Uganda in 1973, transformed their business into an international company and became quite successful. It's actually quite an exciting story, and a story I think we'd like to see repeat itself on Main Street. And they've come back to do this very interesting project, partly as a legacy project. So a little bit about the context. A lot of discussion about stories. What we've done here is we have an axonometric of the context. This project doesn't exist yet, but it's approved. These elevations are survey data. They're geodetic elevations. They're not actually heights of these buildings. They're heights from a geodetic elevation. So number 1 Kingsway is 213.7, the social is 204.2, and the district is 200.6. These are important elevations that we'll refer to in a minute when we get to the site profile. Next slide, please. You've all seen this diagram. We're all familiar with it. It's a diagram that we wanted to respect and adhere to quite closely. This is this notion of a hilltop profile to Mount Pleasant, with the apex being at Broadway. Next. I won't go through all of these images. These are diagrams that relate to the Mount Pleasant plan. The main diagrams that I do want to talk about is this one here in the top corner that talks about enhancing pedestrian access down the lane, and also enhancing pedestrian access and improving public realm along Main Street. Next slide, please. So this is our outline of our proposal. This is 1 Kingsway over here, and this is the roof height of the district. And you can see that there's sort of a gradual increase in height. We've been careful to keep our roof height about 9 feet, 9.5 feet below 1 Kingsway, just slightly above the district. And actually, our proposed roof height is almost exactly the same height as the social, which exists on the kitty corner on 7th Avenue. Also, to articulate the massing, we drew some references from adjacent structures for the podium. We took a datum line through that sort of informs our first step back along Main Street. For the next shoulder at level 4, we took the podium line at the corner of 7th Avenue and the lane from the social. So you see that in blue. And then at the upper story, we took the shoulder line at the district to inform a step at the upper level of our proposal. Furthermore, we've stepped the building on all 4 sides. This is a layered diagram on the right here that shows the different floors as they step back. This is the north face of the building. This is Main Street over here, 7th Avenue. So you can see that the building steps back quite considerably on the lane side, very dramatically across the north facade, and there's a very strong shoulder on Main Street at the 6th floor line. This is another diagram that goes through levels, various floor levels, showing how the floor plates diminish in size as the building goes up in height. These are view cones, views that are out from the adjacent building at the district, as well as views from behind. So we've tried very hard to, and by cutting these tapers into the building facade on the north side, even improving those views a bit further. So it's a combination of reducing floor plate size and also introducing geometry to improve views even further. And so that geometry is what gives the building its unique kind of character. The combination of the stepping and the cuts is what creates this very interesting kind of stepping on the north edge of the building. You've already heard a little bit about the ground plane. I think all I will add to what planning has already mentioned is that there's significant setbacks along Main Street. I think we set back our building edge from the property line at least 9 feet. What that does is it permits a sidewalk of about 18 feet, I believe, with street trees and planting that don't currently exist there. We've also set back artist studios along the lane, which allow for landscaping on the lane, which is a highly desired status from the Mount Pleasant plan. And also, again, the townhouses along 7th Avenue, we've set those back considerably as well. So the building really does pull back on 3 sides at the ground plane, which is really going to permit a significant amount of landscaping along the street edges. Next slide. I'd like to talk a little bit about the sustainability of this project. It is a LEED Gold registered project. We've taken our inspiration from the first 3 photographs. This last one is a notion of light filtering through a forest, and it's a biomimetic strategy that's a passive strategy for sustainability, and we've applied this idea to this project in partly in a way to recall the forest that once was, but also in a way to be able to control light and to increase the thermal resistance of the facades. So, next slide. So the net result is that we've introduced this sort of patterning that begins to recall as shadowing of light through trees. And there's a day condition and a night condition. You can see in the night condition the light sort of beginning to filter through. And with this pattern, this is actually wood behind glass. So there's a sample over on this wall over here. So this building is actually expressed in wood. And this patterning is not haphazard. It's placed in locations on the building where we need shading and sun shading. As planning already mentioned, we went through an extensive process. We participated in 2 implementation plan workshop sessions. Next slide. 2 meetings with MPIC, an open house, and an urban design panel meeting. The project has significant public benefits, including over $4 million in direct cash payments. We would also include the public space improvements through large setbacks on Main Street and on the lane and even on 7th Avenue as public benefits. Lastly, innovative architecture, I think, may be included as part of that. Finally, the facade system has gotten some attention through blogs. It's been featured in World Architecture News, in Habitat, and a number of other blogs. Even now, it's still gaining quite a bit of interest and attention. That's the end of my presentation. Thanks. We do have Marta from Phillips Smallenberg and a member of our team from Bunt and Associates, a traffic consultant, if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. We are at the 10 o'clock hour, which is when we need to conclude or have a motion to extend to continue the meeting. Council's will was to hear the presentations anyway, and that has gotten us to 10 o'clock. We have 16 speakers registered and possibly more here to speak. But inevitably, I think we'll be needing to come back to this at our next night, which is the 29th. Respecting the time, I think it makes most sense for us to stick to our 10 o'clock and hear from all the speakers at the next sitting on the 29th. But I think it would be appropriate if Council wanted to leave questions with staff and the applicant team, send them in via email. We can start that meeting with a catch-up on that front, questions that are related to these presentations, and start right in on the speakers list once we've heard from staff and the applicant team in response to those questions. Does that sound okay to Council as a way to close off tonight? Is everyone comfortable sending those questions by email versus throwing them out there right now verbally? Councillor Reimer, did you want to?
Just for the benefit of, I note there's quite a number of speakers that aren't usually here. A reminder that we can't communicate about this matter between now and the 29th.
That is a good reminder as we're in the midst of the public hearing. Council is not able to communicate. People can send their input to mayor and council at vancouver.ca. But between now and next Tuesday, the 29th of October, it's important that council does not engage in discussion or correspondence in regard to this application. So they're not ignoring those who do write in, emails or phone calls. It's a requirement in law that council does not respond while we are in the midst of this. So with that, we should rise. Okay, so just for everyone, thanks for all of you who are here and patiently maybe hoping we get through the business of this evening's public hearing faster and get to our speakers list for this item. We certainly will be solely focused on this item on Tuesday, October the 29th. And that meeting will start at 6 p.m. So speakers, probably once we hear feedback from staff and the applicant team to the questions, it'll probably be around 6:30. or so, 6:15 to 6:30, when we start hearing from speakers on the speakers list. So with that, we need to rise from committee. A few procedural steps here. Councillor Stevenson moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. And we need a motion to adopt the report of the committee. Councillor Stevenson moves. The seconder. Councillor Deal. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And are we going to recess? We will recess this meeting until Tuesday, October the 29th, 6 p.m. here in Council Chamber. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight.